"Don't pull those tubes, please," Marcus Hayes whispered, voice breaking. "You've been overruled, sir." "Step back," the lead flight nurse replied, gloved hands already moving. The cold hum of the cabin drowned everything else. The jet lingered on the tarmac, motionless, claustrophobic. Fluorescent lights flickered over the stretcher where baby Naomi lay, a tiny infant wrapped in hospital blankets, dark curls pressed to her damp forehead, chest rising shallowly beneath the oxygen mask. Marcus's world tunneled to a single sound, the hiss of the life support tubes. He wasn't her father, but he'd promised her mother, Evelyn, that he would protect the child until she returned from emergency surgery. Now he watched helplessly as a medical crew, impatient with the flight delay, debated protocol like she was luggage to offload. "We need the equipment freed for departure," one crew member said. "She's non-viable," another muttered, quiet but not quiet enough. Marcus stared at their hands, steady, clinical, too ready. He tried to speak, but words tangled with fear. Naomi's pulse monitor beeped faster, then slower, a wavering metronome of borrowed time. A nearby passenger gasped, filming trembling footage with her phone. Someone else whispered, "This isn't right." The captain stood silently in the doorway, torn between schedule, company policy, and the fragile life before him. Marcus clutched Naomi's medical packet. Every page looked official, yet incomplete, missing one signature. One missing signature that meant the crew could classify the infant as unapproved for transport. A steward's voice cut through, "We are removing the tubing per protocol. Please remain seated." The tubes were pulled. The hiss died. For one suspended moment, Marcus could hear only his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Then Naomi's tiny chest fluttered, weak, uneven, and stopped. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her. "Naomi, hold on. Please." The cabin fell silent, every eye fixed on a still body no bigger than a pillow. Outside the window, blue lights flashed. Slow at first, then faster. A caravan of vehicles rolled toward the aircraft, unmarked SUVs, then a van bearing the deep Navy seal of the FAA's Emergency Response Division. The jet door burst open. Agents climbed the stairs, voices loud, badges raised. The nearest supervisor didn't even finish a sentence before two officers took him by the arms. One agent pointed to Naomi's stretcher and said only one word. "Why?" Passengers froze. The crew backed away. Chains clinked. And Marcus, for the first time in an hour, felt hope. Enjoying this? Tap subscribe for tomorrow's story. Dallas, Fort Worth International Airport, earlier that morning. 6 hours before the chains and blue lights, Marcus Hayes stood at the hospital window, watching a storm roll over Dallas. The neonatal transport nurse, Grace Miller, adjusted the straps on the compact stretcher. Inside, baby Naomi slept under a clear plastic shield, cheeks soft, eyelashes resting against dark skin, tiny fists curled near the tape, securing her oxygen line. "She's stable for the flight," Grace said gently. "We'll move slowly." Marcus nodded, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets to hide the shaking. "Her mama, she'll meet us in Charlotte, right?" "That's the plan," Grace answered. "Once Evelyn's out of surgery and cleared to travel, she'll be there at the receiving hospital." The word plan fell thin today. Behind them, the ICU monitors hummed. Evelyn had signed every consent form she could before they wheeled her away, except one. The attending surgeon had been delayed. A missing physician's signature, the clerk had called it. A small oversight, a fixable thing, except they were out of time. "Marcus," Evelyn had whispered just before they took her. "You stay with Naomi. Don't let them talk you out of what's right." "I won't," he'd promised. "You focus on waking up." He'd been a youth counselor for 20 years. He knew how to hold fear for other people. But as they rolled Naomi toward the elevator, it felt like his chest was full of broken glass. At the ambulance bay, the paramedics loaded the stretcher and portable equipment. A security guard checked Naomi's wristband and the packet of medical documents. "Flight nurse name," the guard asked. "Grace Miller." "Escort." "Marcus Hayes," Grace said. "Family friend." "Authorized support." The guard scanned the forms again, frowning at the blank line on the last page. "Doctor didn't sign." Grace lowered her voice. "Physician was tied up in an emergency. Verbal clearance was given. We have the case number." The guard hesitated. Rules brushed up against compassion in his eyes. Finally, he nodded. All right, get her there. As the ambulance pulled away, Marcus sat beside Naomi, watching the rise and fall of her chest. Each breath looked like borrowed courage. You don't know me yet, he murmured, but I promised your mama I'd bring you back to her. So that's what we're doing, okay? The siren wailed softly. The driver took the service route straight to the airport's secure medical access gate. Rain streaked the windshield in gray sheets. At the tarmac checkpoint, a ground operations manager stepped out, clipboard in hand. His badge read, R. Harris, Operations Supervisor. He checked the stretcher, the equipment, the paperwork. What's this line? Harris asked, tapping the missing signature. Grace answered calmly, we have verbal authorization recorded. Pediatric transfer. Receiving hospital is ready. The pilot's been briefed. Harris sighed. You know how this works. If I let this on and something goes wrong, it's my name on the report. Marcus spoke up, voice steady. Sir, her mother's in surgery. They had to move fast. The hospital did everything they could. You delay this, you put Naomi at risk. Harris looked at Marcus more closely. And you are? Marcus Hayes, escort. And he swallowed the rest. And someone who knows enough about federal reporting to make your life complicated. That part could wait. Harris checked his watch. A departure slot was closing. Weather was getting worse. Someone on his radio called, impatient, about equipment and schedules. Finally, he unhooked the gate chain. Fine, he said. But once you're on that plane, my hands are clean. Any issue? It's between you, the flight crew, and your paperwork. The chain rattled back into place behind him. Marcus felt a chill he couldn't name. He would remember that sound later. Dallas, Fort Worth Airport, medical gate, 2 hours pre-flight. They transferred Naomi from the ambulance stretcher onto the aircraft's neonatal pod. The cabin was cool, smelling of jet fuel and sterilized vinyl. Outside, rain drummed against the fuselage, steady and relentless. Grace checked vitals, speaking softly as she worked. Heart rate 130, oxygen sat stable at 92. Good girl. Marcus stood close enough to feel the warmth of the incubator through the clear shell. He wasn't family by blood, but Evelyn's sister had called him uncle since sophomore year. Naomi, barely 8 weeks old, was the closest thing he'd ever had to a child. The captain introduced himself. Captain Reed. Smooth ride forecast to Charlotte once weather clears. Marcus shook his hand, grateful for the measured tone. Reed looked like a man who hated delays but understood gravity. The flight attendant team boarded next, 5 in Navy uniforms. Their lead, a woman with a tight bun and clipped shoes, introduced herself as Supervisor Dana Cross. Her posture said more than her words. Efficiency first, emotion later. She reviewed the medical packet. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3, halt. This is missing a required physician signature, Cross said. Grace lifted her chin. We have verbal clearance logged. The receiving hospital is already staffed. If we wait, her chances worsen. Cross didn't flinch. Policy reads signed clearance for critical infants. We follow procedures for a reason. Marcus stepped forward. Ma'am, Evelyn Hayes trusted me with her child. If Naomi doesn't make it to Charlotte, I'll have to look her mother in the eyes and explain why. Please. Cross turned to the captain. We need command approval to move forward. Reed exhaled slow. We can request exception through operations, but it may take time. Time they didn't have. For a moment, no one moved. The rain outside intensified, wind shaking the jet gently, as if warning them. Grace kept adjusting Naomi's tubing, humming under her breath. Marcus recognized the tune. Amazing grace, fragile, like a promise stretched thin. After nearly an hour of back-and-forth calls, operations finally issued a verbal go-ahead with conditions. Flight crew discretion, no guarantee of liability coverage. It was a green light with strings attached. Marcus thought it was victory. He did not yet see the trap. Boarding passengers filed in. Some noticed the medical pod, offered polite nods, whispered blessings. Others avoided looking, fear wrapped in silence. One woman paused. She's beautiful, she said. Marcus smiled faintly. She's strong. A man behind her frowned at the equipment. Should a baby that's sick even be flying? Marcus felt the words like a blade. She has the right to live. That's why we're here. The man looked away, but a seed of tension remained, small but growing. 15 minutes before pushback, Cross gathered her team. Murmured discussion. A few hard glances toward the pod. Marcus caught fragments. Liability, missing signature. If she declines in the air, company will hold us responsible. He stepped closer, voice low but firm. You signed off to transport a human being. She's not cargo. Cross's expression cooled. We are not the obstacle here, Mr. Hayes. Documentation is. Marcus glanced at Naomi's chest rising faintly under the oxygen flow. He thought of Evelyn on the operating table, trusting them. Trusting him. I'll stay awake the entire flight, he said. I'll watch every line. I'll take responsibility. Cross didn't respond. The cabin doors closed. Fastened seatbelt lights flicked on. Engines spooled, deep and hungry. Hope Marcus thought was still possible. He didn't know the next hour would break open into chaos, and that someone under pressure would make a choice they could never take back. In flight, 42 minutes after takeoff, the jet leveled above the storm clouds, engines humming like a steady heartbeat. Cabin lights dimmed. Most passengers settled into quiet conversation or light sleep. But at seat 14C, Marcus Hayes could not rest. He watched Naomi's monitor like it was a clock counting down the future. Her breathing patterns stayed shallow but rhythmic, oxygen hissing through narrow tubing. Grace sat beside him, documenting vitals every 5 minutes, fingers swift but calm. You're doing everything right, Grace murmured. Doesn't feel like enough, Marcus whispered back. Up the aisle, Supervisor Cross reviewed a tablet, jaw tight. 2 attendants approached her, voices hushed. Marcus heard fragments again. Equipment weight, turbulence risk, incident liability. Grace noticed too. She placed a steady hand on his arm. Focus on Naomi. We keep her stable. That's our job. He nodded, but unease coiled in his stomach like cold wire. 15 minutes later, turbulence hit, mild, but enough to rattle meal trays. A baby 2 Roseback cried. A man grumbled about delays. Someone pressed the attendant call button 3 times in agitation. Little interruptions, nothing dramatic alone, yet each added pressure to an already strained crew. Naomi's oxygen sat dropped 2 points. Grace adjusted flow, voice gentle and firm. Come on, sweetheart. Stay with us. Marcus leaned close, offering warmth through the incubator shell. We're still here. Hold on. Life was in each small breath. Then a tone. A soft chime from the intercom panel. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Reed announced, measured but tense, we've been advised of increased headwind ahead. We may need to adjust altitude. Cabin crew, secure all loose equipment. Grace exchanged a look with Marcus. This was manageable, unless someone panicked. Cross approached, tablet clutched like shield. We need to reassess power allocation. Medical pod is drawing more load than anticipated. If systems overload, Grace cut in firm but respectful. We've compensated by shutting non-essential warmers. Naomi is within safe range. One of the attendants, younger, anxious, spoke too quickly. If the power load spikes, the flight log will trace responsibility to us. We could lose our license, Dana. Cross inhaled sharply through her nose. Fear flashed, quick, human. And Marcus finally understood. Their pressure wasn't cruelty. It was terror. The missing signature was a fault line under every step they took. Passengers began to listen, sensing tension even without context. A man near row 10 said, if that equipment fails and we're over the ocean, we're over Tennessee, Grace corrected gently. We're not crossing water. Still, panic fed on assumption. Someone whispered, maybe it's safer to disconnect just until landing. Marcus stood, voice steady but trembling with righteous clarity. Disconnecting is not neutral. It is harm. That tubing is her lifeline. Cross didn't answer. Her silence was worse than words. And then a new voice entered, the calm low tone of Captain Reed from the cockpit doorway. Everyone step back, he said, eyes scanning pod, crew, Marcus. We make no medical decisions without cause. Not fear. His hand rested on the frame beside him, steadying himself for the moment. But even as he spoke, the cabin lights flickered once. Then twice. Not failure. Not danger. Just a reminder how close everything balanced. Outside the window, sunrise touched the edge of cloud like a promise Marcus could almost believe in. Almost. Because tension was building, and somewhere, unseen yet inevitable, a breaking point approached. In flight, 1 hour 18 minutes after takeoff, the sun climbed higher, thin gold leaking through the window shades. It should have felt hopeful. Instead, the cabin carried a quiet strain, like everyone was waiting for something to crack. Naomi's vitals dipped again, only slightly, but enough to tighten Marcus's throat. Grace adjusted the oxygen flow, performed a quick suction, murmured calm reassurance. "Still with us, little one. You're fighting." Marcus watched her hands work with steady precision. She had done everything right. Everything. But across the aisle, Supervisor Cross conferred with 2 crew members, tablet glowing pale against her face. Marcus saw numbers, power draw, battery reserve estimates, risk metrics. He saw the fear beneath her professionalism. She cast a hesitant glance toward the incubator. That was the moment Marcus felt something inside him harden. Compassion, yes. Understanding, yes. But also resolve. He approached, careful not to raise his voice. "Dana, you are a good supervisor. You want everyone safe. But if Naomi loses that support, she won't get a second chance." Cross held his gaze, conflict raw behind composure. "We don't have legal clearance, Marcus. If something happens, we could lose everything. Then let me sign responsibility," he said. "Put my name on whatever form you need. I will take the burden." Cross swallowed. "There is no such form for this. We aren't allowed to invent one." And there, the second seed of the coming twist, Marcus noticed something clipped to her belt, an ID tag he hadn't seen earlier. Training evaluation underway. A regional compliance auditor was reviewing her performance today. If this transport went wrong, her career might end before it began. Grace stepped forward, voice low with empathy. "No one here wants trouble. But Naomi is not a hypothetical outcome. She is alive. Right now. We protect the living first." Cross nodded faintly, but the decision wasn't hers alone. A passenger 3 rows back stood abruptly. "This is irresponsible. If that equipment drains power or fails midair, we all pay the price." Marcus faced him. "If we cut her support, Naomi pays with her life. You still get to go home." More passengers murmured, some supportive, some frightened. A small argument brewed like a storm front. The young attendant with anxious eyes finally broke. "We can't risk our licenses. Not over paperwork. We need to detach until landing." Marcus moved instinctively, shielding the incubator with his body. "You touch those tubes, you answer for the choice." Cross stepped between them, torn in every muscle. Sweat gathered at her temple, despite the cool cabin air. Captain Reed reappeared, voice quiet but ironbound. "No one removes medical equipment without my authorization." Clear. The attendants froze. But then a new alert chirped from the medical console. Power draw spiked. Naomi's monitor blinked yellow. Not red, but edging close. Fear surged through the aisle like static. Cross's expression cracked into decision, fast, devastating. "Reed, if that alert escalates, we must conserve load." Marcus whispered, "Dana, please." She hesitated, 1 heartbeat. 1. Then she turned to her crew. "Prepare to disconnect." Grace inhaled sharply. Marcus felt the world tilt. The first hand reached for the tubing. The act that would spark outrage, arrest, and a reckoning no one expected began in that single second. In flight, the moment everything broke open. The attendant's fingers brushed the oxygen tubing. Grace moved first. "No. Not without medical cause." Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried through the cabin like a command. Passengers turned, breath caught in collective suspense. Cross hesitated. "We have to protect the aircraft." Marcus stood beside Grace, one palm resting gently on the incubator. "Protecting Naomi is protecting the purpose of this flight. We all share the same sky." Then a voice none of them expected cut through the tension. "I agree." From row 3, a man rose slowly. He looked quiet, unremarkable, gray hair, denim shirt, reading glasses tucked into his collar. He'd been silent the entire flight. Now he stepped into the aisle with a measured steadiness of someone used to authority. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a wallet. Inside, a federal badge. Samuel Trent, he said calmly. Federal Aviation Administration, Special Investigations. A stunned ripple swept through the aircraft. Cross froze. Her face drained of color. You're FAA? On board. Trent nodded, voice even. Routine compliance travel. I was off duty until now. He glanced at Marcus, then at Naomi. I've observed the chain of events. This child received boarding clearance with verbal authorization. That means she is recognized as a passenger under medical protection. Removing life support without critical necessity constitutes unauthorized disposal of life-essential equipment. Cross stammered. We were only considering risk. And you nearly crossed into federal violation, Trent replied. His tone wasn't cruel, but it was unyielding. Passengers leaned forward, silent, watching history shift in real time. Grace whispered to Marcus, This is the break we needed. But Trent wasn't done. He stepped into the narrow space beside the incubator, eyes scanning logs, battery levels, power draw. Then he did something unexpected. He opened a small kit from his bag, portable FAA field equipment. He connected a power monitor directly into the console. Numbers stabilized. Low dropped. Grace gasped softly. A bypass module. How did you have one? Trent's eyes softened for a moment. My granddaughter was born early. I carry a unit when I fly. Old habit. First motif echo, tools of rescue where rules had once stood. Marcus felt emotion swell like a tide. You saved her. No, Trent said quietly. You did. You and Nurse Miller advocated when fear told everyone to step back. He turned to Dana Cross, the supervisor whose career hung on compliance. Your choice here determines more than paperwork. It defines the human value behind protocol. Cross's lips trembled. I didn't want to hurt her. I just couldn't lose my job. Trent nodded once. Then stand with what is right. And I will stand with you. Her eyes filled, not dramatic, just a quiet collapse of fear giving way to conscience. She looked to Grace. Tell me what you need. Grace exhaled, relief shaking through her. Maintain current oxygen flow. Keep pod stable. No interruption. Cross turned to her crew. No one touches the tubing again. Not without medical direction. Understood. Every attendant answered, Yes, supervisor. Marcus's knees nearly buckled. Naomi's monitor beeped steadily, slow but strong. For the first time since takeoff, hope wasn't fragile. It was reinforced by authority. And they were only minutes from the moment everything would escalate again. Faster, louder, unstoppable. Because while one battle had just been won, the airport they were flying toward had already received the complaint. And an investigative response was waiting on the ground with cuffs. Charlotte approached, 27 minutes to landing. The cabin felt lighter, but peace never lasts long at 30,000 feet. A chime sounded, this one different. Urgent. Captain Reed's voice emerged through the speaker, steady but tight. Flight crew, prepare for priority landing clearance. We've been notified of an incoming FAA ground response. All personnel remain at stations. Marcus exchanged a look with Grace. A response? To what? Before she could answer, Trent, now openly working with a medical console, lifted his head. Someone filed a serious complaint. His tone was regret without surprise. Cross's hand flew to her mouth. Was it? She didn't need to finish. Marcus already understood. One passenger. One moment of fear. One call made mid-flight to an airport safety hotline, spun into urgency by incomplete details. Trent confirmed it. They're expecting to detain your crew for negligent equipment disposal. They believe the tubes were already removed. Marcus felt the floor tilt, though the plane flew level. But we didn't disconnect, Grace said. Trent nodded. I know. But your actions will be judged by the report they received. Perception, not truth. Cross's eyes filled again. Not weakness, but realization. Marcus, if ground personnel stormed this aircraft believing Naomi was deprived of support, they'll move fast, Trent finished. Flash decision. No context. Marcus stared down at Naomi, a tiny life hanging by threads of air, paperwork, and faith. Anger flared, not reckless but righteous. We land with facts, with evidence, with witnesses. Trent's look shifted from investigator to ally. I'm willing to testify. But protocol says crew restraint first, questions later. So they'll drag them out in front of everyone, Marcus whispered. Grace touched his arm. Not if we're ready. The plan formed in the air between them. A Naomi stable on bypass power, a continuous video from the medical pod FAA badge present on arrival documented vitals proving uninterrupted support. They had truth, but truth needs a voice. Captain Reed emerged again, invited by Trent. I contacted Tower, he said. Told them we maintain medical care. They'll still board us with enforcement. Marcus clenched his jaw. Then let them see what we protected. Passengers around them rose, not in panic, but with purpose. The same woman who'd called Naomi beautiful earlier held up her phone. I recorded everything. They never pulled those tubes. Another man nodded. I'll say what I saw. Small voices of witnesses. A protective circle forming. Cross approached Marcus, trembling, not from fear this time, but resolve. When they enter, she said, you stand by the pod. Grace stands on your left. I'll stand on your right. We show unity, not conflict. Marcus inhaled deeply. You sure you want to be in front when the door opens? Cross nodded once. I do now. The descent began. Wheels lowered. Engines softened to a rumbling whisper. Tarmac rushed up beneath them. The moment the cabin door cracked open, cold air blew in, along with the thunder of boots. Agents flooded the entryway. Chains ready, voices sharp. Step back. All crew away from the infant. Grace didn't move. Marcus didn't move. Cross did not take one step back. And behind them, Trent lifted his badge high enough to catch the light. The room froze around them. Accountability was seconds from rewriting the story of that morning for everyone on board. Charlotte Airport, jet bridge, engines still cooling. The moment the lead FAA officer saw Trent's badge, hesitation sliced through the boarding party like a brake applied at full speed. Special investigations, the officer asked, disbelief edging his voice. Trent stepped forward, posture steady. Correct. I witnessed full continuity of medical support. No tubes were removed. Gas trickled through the cabin. Cross exhaled, knees nearly bending from relief. But the officer wasn't finished. We received a real-time complaint of life support tampering. We must verify on scene. Grace lifted the incubator shield with practiced care. Naomi breathed steadily, tiny chest rising, falling, oxygen line secure, monitor green. Marcus watched the faces of the boarding officers change. Arms loosened. Chains lowered a fraction. One younger officer, rookie in the stiffness of his stance, looked shaken. They told us she'd been disconnected. They were wrong, Marcus said quietly. Not triumph, just truth. Grace handed over vitals logs recorded during the flight. Continuous support. Zero removal. Timestamped. Then a voice rose from row 4, the woman with the earlier video. I recorded when they threatened to disconnect. They didn't follow through. She held up her phone, screen glowing bright in the dim cabin. You should see this. The officers accepted the device. They reviewed silent footage, and hovering near tubes but never pulling. Marcus blocking their path. Grace arguing with calm courage. Trent stepping forward with his field equipment. Truth captured in frames. The commanding officer turned slowly toward Cross. You were prepared to disconnect? Cross's throat bobbed before she answered. Yes, briefly, under pressure. But I stopped. Nurse Miller stopped me. Marcus Hayes prevented escalation. The infant remained supported. Her honesty landed heavy, but honorable. Trent added, firm and clear, she made the right decision when it counted. That matters. Silence hovered, heavy as judgment, light as reprieve. Finally, the officer spoke. We will take statements, but no crew member will be detained today. Tension broke like a wave against rock. Marcus felt his legs weaken, and Grace steadied him with a hand. Naomi stirred softly, still alive. Still here. Cross stepped closer to Marcus, voice barely above whisper. I owe you an apology. Fear drove me when courage should have. Marcus shook his head gently. You stood beside her in the end. That's the part that lives. The officers cleared a path to disembark. Medics arrived with a neonatal transport team from the receiving hospital, wheeling a fresh support rig. Their lead physician, Dr. Hannah Cole, approached with calm authority. "We're ready to transfer Naomi. She's stable enough for ground movement." Marcus released a breath he'd held for hours. Grace smiled faintly, exhaustion softening her voice. "You made it, baby girl." As they rolled Naomi down the jet bridge, a small crowd gathered outside, airport staff, 2 news cameras, bystanders drawn by the unusual scene. One reporter called out, "Sir, are you the guardian of the infant?" Marcus paused, not for glory, but to ensure Evelyn's story remained intact. "I'm just the man who promised to protect her," he said. "And I'm grateful to everyone who helped keep that promise." Shutters clicked. Airport speakers echoed overhead. Life continued, but reputations would not emerge untouched. Investigations would open. Procedures would change. And the woman who almost disconnected the tubes would soon be summoned into a room where truth and accountability waited side by side. Charlotte Children's Medical Center, 14 hours later. Naomi lay beneath the gentle glow of neonatal lights, her breathing steady, oxygen flow soft like whispering feathers. New monitors blinked in calm rhythm. No alarms. No panic. Just life. Marcus sat beside the crib, Evelyn's hospital photo clutched loosely in his hand. He hadn't slept, not really, but peace had settled into his bones like warm weight. Nurses came and went with quiet efficiency. Dr. Cole updated charts with approving nods. Grace entered with 2 coffees, one placed gently beside him. "You stayed," she said. "I promised her mother," Marcus replied. "Not just to get Naomi here, but to hold on afterward." Grace smiled, small, tired thing. "You kept it." All the way through. Across the room, Dana Cross stood at the doorway, uniform replaced with plain clothes, hair down, tension gone. She waited, respectful, uncertain if she was welcome. Marcus gestured her inside. She stepped closer, voice low but clear. "I came from the post-flight review. I wanted you to hear this directly." Grace moved nearer, listening. "Internal audit opened a full case," Cross continued. "The attempt to disconnect life support was documented. But so was the reversal and the intervention that ensured Naomi survived." She swallowed, eyes glassing. The FAA investigator, Trent, submitted a personal statement. He said our final decisions demonstrated corrective courage. He called it evidence of reform potential, not negligence. Marcus breathed out slowly. "So your job?" "On probation," she said. 6 months oversight. Additional training. A chance to rebuild trust instead of losing everything." She glanced at Naomi, voice soft. "She saved me too, in a way. She forced me to choose who I want to be." Grace nodded. "Growth counts. You came back stronger." Cross looked to Marcus, searching. "Do you forgive me?" Marcus thought of the moment hands reached for the tubes. Of fear and pressure. Of the strength it took for Cross to step forward later, to stand between Naomi and harm instead of behind policy. Forgiveness came not as a rush, but as a slow opening. "I forgive effort, honesty, and change," he said gently. "And you've shown all 3. Cross's breath shuddered out. Relief softened her posture. She touched Naomi's tiny foot through the porthole with reverence. A knock interrupted. A nurse peeked in. "Marcus, someone's asking for you in the hall." His heart knew before his feet moved. He stepped outside, and Evelyn stood there, pale from surgery but upright, supported by a walker and determination. Her eyes found him first, then trailed to the crib inside. "Is she?" Evelyn's voice cracked. "She's alive," Marcus said, voice trembling. "Stable. Breathing strong." Evelyn pressed a hand to her mouth, tears falling without sound. Marcus guided her to the bedside. She looked at Naomi like sunrise returning after endless night. "My baby," she whispered. "My girl." Marcus stepped back, giving space, giving grace. The room filled with something weightless, relief, gratitude, second chances woven into air. For the first time in 2 days, Marcus allowed himself to breathe easily. Tomorrow would bring statements, hearings, policy revisions. There would be interviews, reports, reforms. But today was about a mother touching her child again. 3 months later, Charlotte Airport observation deck, late afternoon. Sunlight washed the runway in long, amber strokes. A slow breeze carried the distant hum of departing jets. Steady, predictable, safe. Marcus Hayes stood beside the observation glass, coffee cooling in his hands. Below him, planes taxied in neat lines, each movement smooth, orchestrated, almost gentle. He did not come here often, but today mattered. Behind him, small footsteps pattered, the soft, uneven rhythm of early recovery. Naomi, now nearly 5 months old, sat in Evelyn's arms, a knitted pink cap snug over new curls. A portable oxygen unit rested in the stroller beside them, not life support now, just assurance. Her breathing was stronger, her eyes brighter. She kicked her feet like she was already learning to fly. Evelyn smiled at Marcus. She knows your voice. Every time you talk, she turns her head. Marcus felt warmth rise through him, quiet and deep. She's heard enough of it. Not enough, Evelyn said. You carried her through the sky. He looked back out at the runway. We all did. Grace, Trent, even Dana, once she found her courage. As if summoned by name, Grace approached from behind, badge clipped to a light cardigan instead of scrubs. She carried a small wrapped box. I come bearing gift, she teased softly. Evelyn laughed. What is it now? You already spoiled her with that music mobile. Grace handed the box to Marcus. This one's for you. He opened it carefully. Inside lay a simple silver keychain, a miniature wing, engraved with 6 small words. Steadfast when others wavered. Marcus blinked away unexpected tears. I didn't do it alone. No, Grace agreed. But you were the first to stand. Footsteps approached next, Dana Cross. She carried herself differently now, shoulders lower, voice gentler when she joined the group. Her probation wasn't over, but progress had been steady. She now volunteered twice a month with neonatal transport advocates, helping families understand paperwork, signatures, rights. Dana knelt beside Naomi, who cooed softly in recognition. I came to return something that belongs with you, Dana said. She placed a laminated page into Marcus's hand. The missing signature line, a copy framed beneath an FAA post-report citation. Recommendation: required emergency override protocol, drafted and adopted. Pilot, medical staff, and guardian may authorize transport in absence of final physician signature when delay risks life. Witness: Samuel Trent, FAA. Marcus traced the line with his thumb. Not blank anymore. Now filled with new policy, built from the moment everything almost went wrong. Dana continued, voice steady. No infant should hang between legality and survival ever again. Because of Naomi, because of all of you, that gap is closed. Evelyn looked at her daughter with awe. My little girl changed something bigger than herself. Marcus stepped to the glass, sunlight haloing silhouette. Planes lined the horizon, waiting their turn, engines idle but ready. Below, in one of the loading bays, neonatal transport teams now trained weekly, standard practice after the incident. Marcus watched them practice connecting portable oxygen to flight rigs. Procedure born from crisis. He felt Grace beside him, felt Evelyn's presence behind, felt the world expanded by one fragile life who refused to let go. Naomi stirred, soft and content. Marcus leaned down so she could see his face clearly. You held on longer than fear, he whispered. And because of you, others will too. In the reflection on the observation glass, the 4 stood together. No chains, no alarms, no shouting orders. Just people changed. A jet lifted into the sky, smooth, effortless, rising toward open blue. Naomi's eyes followed it upward. Andy, thanks for watching.